proteins are made up of little building blocks called amino acids. And in our previous video we explained that those amino acids are just like the bricks in this wall. They build structure, but they are not the same as the fuel that your body uses to burn for energy. Your car is made of metal and pieces of plastic, but you don't put metal and plastic into the fuel tank. The structure of the car is not the same as what is needed to make energy. Your cells have a structure of proteins and fats. There are so many diet fads and crazes going around at the moment. And after one of the previous videos that we did on protein, a question came that asked, is this whole food plant-based diet that we're advocating not very high in sugars? We're encouraging people to eat a supply of fresh produce, including grains and fruit and vegetables. And people are concerned that this has a very high sugar content. Today I want to share with you some of the principles that we incorporate in our health education for our patients that help to prevent a whole foods plant-based diet from causing problems with blood sugar levels. This door in the brick wall behind me over here is an excellent example or a good depiction of what it is like to provide energy for our cells. The proteins and the fats that we eat help to form the structure of a cell, just like this little building behind me here. But fuel has to get into the cell in order for that cell to burn it, to actually produce energy from it. So carbohydrates don't get used in the cell wall or in this brick wall. The carbohydrates have to go inside. Inside human cell walls are little gateways, almost like this doorway. And that doorway or gateway stays closed unless it is opened up by insulin. Insulin is the substance that triggers those gateways to open, allowing carbohydrates into the cells. There are three key factors which will determine whether the carbohydrates you eat will cause unstable blood sugar levels or excessively high blood sugar levels. These three factors include which kinds of carbohydrates you eat, the timing and when you eat them, and what you do with that energy. No matter what diet you choose, these factors will always play a role, but let's focus for a moment on somebody who is following a whole foods plant-based diet, such as the one that we are encouraging people to eat. The first factor is the choice of carbohydrates. Now, I want to make it very, very clear that we are not advocating that people eat a high carbohydrate diet which contains processed carbohydrates. We're encouraging people to eat a whole foods plant-based diet, and what is meant by whole food is that the carbohydrate you eat, such as grains for instance, is eaten without having been processed and elements of that grain being removed. We're encouraging people to eat the whole grain as God created it, including all the minerals and the fiber which help to stabilize the uptake of sugar into cells. These whole foods are made in perfect little packages. They are little bombshells of nutrients, fiber, minerals, vitamins, enzymes, and nutrient elements that are not going to cause health problems as long as they are eaten without being tampered with. If you're taking flour, for instance, white flour is flour made from wheat where the fiber and the wheat germ has been taken out and it leaves behind only the starch, only the pure sugar, the refined sugar if you like. But when you take a whole grain, even if you were to grind it into a flour, that grain still contains all the fiber and the minerals and elements that help to stabilize blood sugar levels. So when we're encouraging people to incorporate carbohydrates in their diet, such as grains, as well as fruits and vegetables, we're suggesting that they have the whole food. Another example that people always question is including lots of fresh fruit in your diet. And yes, if you're eating fruit where you have actually removed all the fiber and you're having that fruit as a snack, or you're drinking a fruit juice in snack time for instance, that can cause your blood sugar levels to spike up. However, if you are eating your fruit in the whole food form, where you are also eating it with all the fiber and you're adding it to a meal that contains proteins and seeds and other elements, that sugar in the fruit will be released into the bloodstream slowly and it will be taken up into the cell in gradual formats. Eating a whole food diet is not just about which carbohydrates you eat, but also how you combine them with other foods. And the most important factor when it comes to choosing safe carbohydrates if you have a tendency to unstable blood sugar levels is to make sure that your meals containing carbohydrates are also high fiber meals with good sources of protein. Another example is the use of things like dates or raisins or applesauce or honey as a sweetener. These things, because they are whole foods, tend to cause fewer problems with blood sugar levels. And when they're combined into meals that also contain a lot of fiber and protein, they don't release those sugars into the bloodstream in a spike kind of format. Now, I should add to this that if you have conditions such as diabetes or fungal infections in your bloodstream, or you're fighting an infection, or in particular if you are fighting cancer, you should be reducing your intake of sweet foods, even if it is a whole food. So if you have any of these conditions, I would recommend that you adjust the proportions a little bit and make sure that when you're eating fruit, that you try and eat fewer of the really sweet fruits and that you include more of the low sugar fruits. Google has ample information on fruit that contain less sugar. Berries, kiwis, grapefruit, those are excellent ideas for fruit that doesn't contain as much sugar. So yes, for individual conditions and specific health problems, we do make adjustments, but in general, we do encourage people to include both fruit and grains in their diets because of the nutrients they contain, as well as vitamins and enzymes, which cannot be replaced if someone eats all their energy sources predominantly from proteins and fats. The second key factor that we mentioned is timing, and this is absolutely important. I have recently discovered that research has proven that early in the morning, at sunrise, we all tend to have a spike in our insulin levels. But not only that, our cells tend to be more insulin sensitive early in the day than later in the day. What does this mean for how the body is functioning and what you can do in your health? Well, the practical application is that your body is more ready to deal with carbohydrates early in the morning than later in the day. You want to have your fresh fruits and your high carbohydrate foods as early and as close to sunrise as you can, because you have the insulin available to open the gateways, and because those gateways are most easily going to open to allow those carbohydrate sources into the cells. At any point, if sugar is trapped in your bloodstream because it is not taken up into cells as quickly as it should be, that buildup of sugar in the bloodstream becomes very strong, it's highly acidic, and it can actually cause burn wounds, chemical and abrasive burn wounds, in your arteries and your veins. And that kind of inflammation leads to a host of other inflammatory problems such as atherosclerosis and cholesterol problems and many other issues. In other words, if you want to choose the best time of day to eat your carbohydrates, the earlier in the day you can do that, the better. The next thing that you're going to remember with timing is to allow that meal to digest completely before you eat the next meal. If you're interrupting the digestive processes of one meal by adding food into the stomach too quickly before it has emptied from the previous meal, food will ferment and actually produce sugar that will increase your blood sugar levels. So you want to eat your breakfast and give it a minimum of 5 to 6 hours before you eat anything else. The next thing to remember when it comes to timing is to eat your second meal for the day well away from bedtime. We generally encourage people to eat only 2 meals a day because it's easier to ensure that each meal has enough time to finish digestion and metabolism before that person goes to bed. Going to bed on an empty stomach will mean that your gut gets to rest when you rest, nutrients are better absorbed from the gut into the bloodstream, and they are better taken up into your cells without any problems with blood sugar instability. The third factor we mentioned is activity levels. And here again I want to emphasize that when we're encouraging people to eat a diet consisting of a lot of fresh fruit and vegetables and grains, we are also encouraging them at the same time to live an active lifestyle. A sedentary lifestyle is not healthy for anybody, but in particular if you are spending most of your time behind a desk or not doing a lot of physical activity, then yes, you should be reducing your carbohydrate intake. But then you should also actually be reducing your overall food intake, not just carbohydrates. A low level of activity will cause problems with digestion, absorption, and metabolism. For that reason, all the dietary advice that we give to patients comes along with an extra bit of encouragement to live an active lifestyle. And it's interesting to notice that the more physical activity you do, the better your cells allow for sugar to go inside, because the little gateways are more insulin sensitive in people who do regular physical activity. if you are following these 3 key principles that we have mentioned, eating your carbohydrates in a whole food form, including all the fiber and the minerals that they come in, staying away from processed sugars and refined sugars and carbohydrates. If you are also timing your meals so that each meal can digest fully, that your meals are as early as possible in the day, and that you're going to bed with an empty stomach, and if you're doing ample physical activity, then a whole foods plant-based diet, even one that includes a lot of fruit and sugary things or sweet kinds of food, will not and should not cause blood sugar instability. Our patients have been an incredible testimony to this fact. We have diabetic patients who are eating plenty fresh fruit and vegetables and grains without any trouble. In fact, since switching to a whole foods plant-based diet, many of our patients, including our diabetic patients, have reported increased levels of energy, a better sense of well-being, a reduced need for napping during the day, and many of them are actually able to maintain perfectly stable and normal blood sugar levels without any medication or insulin. The sun has gone down here and I am going to start getting ready for winding down for the day. The last thing I want to do right now is to put food into my stomach while I'm not actually going to burn that energy. I know that one of the questions that you might have is, how on earth will I switch to 2 meals a day and not feel terrible or feel nauseous or hungry when I go to bed at night? I can also assure you that most of the people that we have spoken to and that we have recommended this to, including my own family members, have all testified to the fact that switching to 2 meals a day has taken less than a week for the body to adjust and for them to get used to not having food just before bedtime. In fact, people often report better sleep, better quality of sleep, and feeling more refreshed in the morning. They also report a better appetite for healthy things and fewer cravings for junk foods. So I'm hoping that you're going to try this, and as always, I know you might have questions, so please remember to let us know what your questions are. Share your comments with us in the comment section below. Share these videos with people that you might think they could be useful for, and remember to stay in touch with us. We hope to see you again next time.